Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and of course, across the table again is Mr. Nate Newton. Nate,
Again.
how are you, sir?
Again,
man.
I know.
It's like we get this repetition going where we've.
It's weird. It's Wednesdays and
it's
just consumed
Wednesday.
by this shit.
Yeah, and we had a weekend recording,
Yeah.
and we've been kind of hitting at this pretty hard.
Yeah, just so you know, I still haven't received a paycheck. So.
It's probably where mine is.
Sitting in Breckenridge's office.
Hey, do you see all of this digital
Oh my
equipment?
God,
This is our paycheck,
This is
buddy.
the paycheck.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is it. You were making the joke earlier of where we began,
Mm-hmm.
and you were sitting in the chair behind you, holding your microphone.
Yeah.
And we've been able to slowly improve our setup.
Mm-hmm.
Having the studio now helps a lot.
No, it does.
So we're continuing our series.
Yeah, and it's dude, I've had so much fun with this so far. Like, there's a whole new perspective involved, and we're shedding some light on some stuff that doesn't get talked about. You know, like, I mean, first off, we did the mental health with Cam, which that's one nobody ever wants to talk about.
Which is, there's a part 2 coming to that.
Oh yeah,
well.
absolutely. Cam's actually going to come out here, so that's going to be rad. But this women in the trades thing has been, dude, it's been eye opening, but it's also pretty uplifting. You know, like there's been so much information and so much positivity around it. You know, like nobody's come in here and bitched about shit. It's just like, yeah, just fucked up shit happens, but this is how we deal with it. You know, it's like solutions-based conversations, and that's really what we wanted to get out of it.
Yeah, and we're adding to that today. And again, kind of when I put that post out, and I'm learning as I'm interacting with these women that people shared this, and I don't know how social media works, so it's like, wait,
put the picture up,
yeah,
and somebody
and
looks at
somebody
it,
shares it, and there's hashtags and all kind of weird stuff I don't understand. And I had somebody reach out to me from Australia, and we've got her. You're actually on a big screen in front of us, so we can see you, and we've got everything set up. But we have Louise from Australia on a Zoom call with us today. We got everything set up to record, and I'm going to let you kind of roll through your introduction, and we're going to kind of get into this because I'm really excited about what it is that you do, the perspective that you bring, the experience that you have. So, Louise, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome. Like, I don't know how the post come about with the world of social media, but I'm glad I found it.
Yeah, as are we.
You hear that?
Yeah.
Welders social media.
Oh, God. I'm changing the name of this to just Not a Welders Podcast. That's the name of it.
Yeah. So I am a heavy vehicle and plant mechanic by trade, and I'm currently a life coach for women in trades. So I started my apprenticeship in 2012 when I was 15. Straight out of high school, straight into the workplace. So as a 15-year-old, any gender, that was a shock to the system, going into the big world of adults.
15-year-old.
Yeah, so you guys graduate at 15?
We can. So we can leave, like, there's like our high school, and then there's senior high school, and you can like either opt in or opt out of senior high school.
I know 15-year-olds that graduated 8th grade. Good old Midwest.
Yeah, buddy. Straight to the coal mines for you.
Straight to it. Man, at 15, wow, that brings up all kinds of interesting questions and thoughts. But so you said heavy diesel mechanic?
Yeah, heavy diesel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I started there. I qualified, so we do a 4-year apprenticeship. Qualified when I was 19. And then from there, I was like, kind of, on a roll. So I added some courses. I did a Cert 4 in diagnostics, went into auto electrical space, went into mobile plant mechanics. And then from there, I did my apprenticeship at Cummins. So from there, after doing my apprenticeship there, I went and worked for a small business where it was just like me, the boss, and apprentice. And we pretty much worked on farms, fixed anything that moved on the farm, even the things that weren't moving, that were supposed to be moving.
I think that's the point, isn't it? Yeah.
That sounds like a farm.
Hey, I do gotta ask though, did you ever weld at any point?
No.
Oh,
yes. All right, she's on my team.
Yeah.
No, I never got. My brother is a good welder, like my dad tried to get me to weld, and then my brother come along and he was better at it, so then he just was doing it.
He said, "You're fired."
Yeah.
Next.
Go back to the ranch.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Why?
So from there,
yeah, I'm sorry. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah, then we can
Yeah.
backpedal with some questions.
no, all good. So from there, I spent 2.5 years like kind of doing that field service on farms, and then I ended up burning myself out. I had competed in the World Skills Competition, which is an international trades competition. Competed regionally, nationally, and internationally, and I come fourth internationally.
Damn.
In that, and then from there I was like speaking and doing the podcast like with different people and working full time still, and I just worked myself sick. Like I physically couldn't move, so I spent 4 months off working full time, and then I went back into work as an apprentice mentor, and then from there I become a trainer and assessor. So I was working for our local Caterpillar dealer, training their apprentices and doing what we called trade upgrades, so guys that were light vehicle mechanics to heavy vehicle mechanics. So I was training them. And then, like teaching, I really found that there was a gap in the technical space because the students were struggling personally, and like working through things like anxiety, talking to their supervisor, being able to manage their thoughts and their confidence was really affecting them technically. And then from there, I come across life coaching, which I loved, and I was like, hell yeah. And I was like, okay, looking at coaches, there was like coaches for like CEOs and business people. And I was like, where are the coaches for the tradies? Aren't we like good enough to have a coach? So then I decided that I would be that person. So then I left working full time. I got a contract position, carry out training and assessment. So then I could build the coaching business, which has turned into life coaching for tradeswomen.
That's fucking
Dude.
outstanding.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Found a gap, filled it. I mean, I would assume this keeps you pretty busy, right?
Yeah, well, it's just like any business where it's building. So it's just like working through my own shit of actually being paid to help people, because I was doing it for free for so long as well. Like just being like, hey, friend, sister in the trade, I can help you. And now it's kind of like making a livelihood out of it. And I have had a bit of like personal struggle, like with actually asking for money for people who were like my friends, who are my friends. But yeah, it's building.
Yep. You have to start out giving it away. And I talked to multiple coaches in the beginning when this was kind of still in its, even before its inception, it was still in the thought stage. And I was talking to people, and there was a common thread of advice, and they said, you have to give it away.
Who was the first person to tell you had to give it away? Jocko Willenick.
Jocko Willenick was the first person, and he told me, he's like, give it away. And then, because you have to generate results to generate value, and then you can start to put a price on it. And so, and I'm still in that same pool of building, and I'm having contractors graduate pretty rapidly, and I don't have enough build up, people waiting to get into the program yet. So there's an interesting balance, and I appreciate the fact that you said, yeah, are the trades not good enough, right? The tradie's not good enough, and I've experienced the same thing. You're approaching it from a life coaching perspective. I approach it from a leadership perspective, and in either one of those arenas, there's no one else doing it. Everybody focuses on business, profit, and sales.
Yeah.
So,
and even just like how tradies talk about themselves as well. It's like, oh, I'm just a plumber, I'm just a mechanic.
Yes.
Like even just catching that language, it's like, no, like literally look at the pandemic. Like the world would have collapsed without trading.
Yeah.
Completely.
They're like, everybody stay at home except for these really necessary motherfuckers. Like,
Here's a pass.
Yeah.
You can go. I was working with an electrician in Australia for a few months. We were working together, and he just had more work than they knew what to do with. And it was a really neat perspective for me to gain about the workforce and how things were kind of structured a little bit differently than here. I want to back up on your story a little bit. What was the attraction to the trades for you? Because 15's, pretty young for anyone to have an idea of what they want to do.
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm. So my parents grow crops, and they're currently growing tomatoes. So I was always with my dad working. I'm the oldest of 4. So like I come along, on the farm, always just with dad. We rode and raced dirt bikes as well, fixing machines. And I knew that like school and studying wasn't for me. Like I couldn't sit still, wasn't a fan whatsoever. So then it was like, okay, mum and dad didn't want me to go straight onto the farm. They were like, okay, go and experience life. And then, if you still want to come back, come back. So I made it to, so year 10 is like the year that you can either like go on to year 11 and 12, which is our senior years, or you can leave. So I was in year 10 and I was like, okay, well, I want to leave. I need to find something to leave into. And I was like, at the time, there was a bit of a time between I was thinking of doing like design, like textiles, like fashion design, and mechanics, because I really just loved creating with my hands and working with my hands. I ended up going with mechanics, and I did work experience. So just like free work in my school holidays at like the local shop where we used to get our motorbike parts from. Just places like that locally around. And then I met Sarah at a careers expo. So we had like an apprenticeship expo where companies who had their apprenticeships available, like all on display. And Sarah was there, and she was a first year apprentice, like heavy diesel mechanic. And she was the same height as me, also like blonde hair at the time. I've got red hair at the moment, but but the same build as me. And we had just finished getting lectured by some other guy from another stand, being like, "You're too small to be a mechanic. You're going to struggle too much." Like blah blah blah. And then he was this like woman who was like, "Yeah, I'm a mechanic. Come do work experience with us." Who looked like me, so it like kind of prepped me up a little bit more. And mum and dad were like, "Yeah, cool. We'll take you to do work experience there." And I did it, and I loved it, and I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Applied for the position, and I ended up getting like the position to do an apprenticeship with the Cummins dealer.
Outstanding. Well, I mean, especially if you go heavy diesel mechanic, there isn't a dude out there that's going to pick up a transmission for an 18-wheeler. Like, everybody uses equipment to get things into place, like it's...
Yeah, and I think that's like something that so many people don't understand. Like, these things weigh hundreds of kilos. Like, nobody can lift them up. And even in saying that, in the things where, like, diversity is key, not even just, like, in gender, but the amount of times the big buff guy asked me for help as I asked him for help was pretty equal. Like, he'd be like, "Hey, I can't fit into this tight space." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Can you lift this out for me while I do this thing?"
Yeah.
Then we just swap back out.
Trade-off, yeah. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's, that's one hell of a career to get into, because, it's dangerous as shit, for one. Heavy mechanics, there's a lot of big moving parts, and usually failures are pretty catastrophic if you fuck it up, like it's not like blowing a rod on a 350 or something, it's, if you don't do it right, things go bad real fast. So, and they're very expensive when you fuck them up. So there's a lot of anxiety attached to doing these jobs, which a lot of people don't understand the amount of anxiety behind it.
Yeah, I think mechanical is probably one of the trades that produces the most anxiety, because you could literally spend a whole week building an engine and you don't know if you've done it right until you turn the key.
This is a very, very moment of truth type situation,
That sounds... I feel anxious.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about that, that's awful.
Yeah.
But I think it's just like, even with the guys and stuff like that, because I've coached a few tradesmen as well, and just like in my network, it's just like recognizing that, like, yeah, you know what? You're putting together like thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. It's like, yeah, you put something together, you put it into a deep dark hole, and you put a cover over it. And yeah, sometimes you think about that a lot.
Yeah, until you fire that switch, you don't know.
Yeah.
And then you're going through that mental checklist right before you fire it, and you're like, did I tighten that crank bolt? Did I spec that? The 10,000 steps that go into something like rebuilding a motor, it's that, very nerve-wracking, and especially when it's on somebody else's dime, So
at 15, so I think when I got introduced into the trades, and I went to work in a mechanic shop summer I turned 14, and I know what
my head, like I know.
I know what my indoctrination period was like, being 14 and working in a shop full of, wrench throwing, beer swilling sons of bitches.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that experience like for you?
I think it was like being like a woman in the trades, especially going into a place where they hadn't had a woman in there before, was like, it's almost like the people are like scared of you. Like the boys can go to that point where they're like scared of saying to you, and they're almost like scared of talking to you and that kind of thing. And it can actually be quite isolating at the beginning for women, because it's just like no one wants to talk to you sometimes because they're scared of saying the wrong thing.
Okay.
That seems to be a recurring. That's like
Yeah.
a recurring theme that we see. This is our third episode for this series with women, and they've all said the same thing. So, I mean, if there is any sort of remedy to that, what would that remedy look like?
So there's a few things. It's just even just being able to be, okay to get it wrong. Like just being able to be like, hey, let me know if I cross a line, and just go in with that like kind of dialogue open. Like one thing like casually that we can do, even though we talked about it before we started recording, is the swearing. Mm-hmm. Like I know if I go into a conversation with people like tradesmen that I haven't met before, and I can see they're kind of a bit off put by like, oh shit, how do we talk to her? Mm-hmm. It's like I'm an alien coming in that speaks a different language. You drop a few like F's and C's, and they're just like, oh yeah, cool, like she's one of us.
Yeah. So, but here in the United States, we can't drop the C's.
You cannot drop the C's. That is
that one gets us in trouble.
In Australia, we drop the C's quite often.
Yeah. I was trying to think of what word we would use that would be equivalent, and
it's just fuck.
Yeah,
fuck
it would have to.
It
be.
encompasses most of that.
Yeah,
so
have to be.
Yeah.
No, that's it. But I think like that guard comes down like a lot when they're just like, oh.
Yeah, I 100%
like,
agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you if you cross the line, and like a lot of the time, like really like unless they're saying something awful to you, like you can like that's with anyone, but like then you come into the point where it's like, yeah, talk to me how you talk to anyone else. But if you're treating other people like shit, you probably shouldn't be treating those people like shit as well. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people are just assholes. That's just the way the way it works, But I feel like that's a really good tactic, though. They come in and you be the one to step out first, and because like you're saying, being alienated, that's really hard to deal with. But if you're the one that can break down the barrier first, that kind of opens the door. It's like an open door policy at that point, and that's
it. It's
because that's how we all talk to each other. So
yeah.
Sorry, I'm starting over here. I'm just processing, and because my indoctrination period was completely different. So that's why I asked that question.
We just got beaten.
Yeah, that was tied and thrown in dumpsters and greased and hit.
But I also feel like you're like, especially the women in Australia, New Zealand, your guys' introduction into the trades is a lot different because there is much more of a focus on the trades when you go to leave high school. Like Josh likes to put it, we're the third option here in the United States. That it's college, military, and then you just fucking burned out and became a tradesman, But as where you guys hold it up on I'm not going to say a pedestal, but you hold it up higher in regard than we do here in the States. Yeah, because
I think like not that we hold it up high. It's like becoming. Like, we have a really big skills shortage here, like, in Australia. And I think we have a skills shortage pretty much everywhere. Mm-hmm. But just seeing that, like, everything is on an equal platform, and the government and, like, the education system is really putting an emphasis on changing that. So, like, at the moment, there's so much, like, pretty much the government is throwing money at making the trades and everything an equal platform and an option for everyone to pick, because the economy is suffering so much because there isn't enough tradespeople.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that the pay is pretty? It's pretty good for being a tradie.
Yeah, the pay is pretty good. Like we're pretty lucky. Well, I wouldn't say lucky. I think like you guys should probably catch up. But we have like a minimum base wage, like standard across everyone. It's not like union versus non-union. We still have unions and stuff over here, but a lot of the work that the union's done has been like implemented in policy. Like just that's it.
It's like we call it prevailing wage here, where if you do any state-run projects, you have to pay what the union wages are, even if you're a non-union company. So that's good to see in that aspect. It keeps people from fucking their people over, And
Yeah.
I mean, especially when the economy wipes out, the public works department it's always there. There's always going to be state-run shit that has to be done. So it really helps boost that along. It keeps it afloat. And I like having both union and non-union involved in it because it kind of keeps it fair across the board. The unions aren't overstepping their boundaries, and the private sector isn't undercutting the shit out of, they're not taking advantage of the workers. So it's like there's a happy medium there.
Yeah, that's it. And especially like with pay in the trades at the moment, because tradespeople are kind of like a rarity at the moment. Like it's almost like the companies are fighting for the tradespeople to work for them. So that's actually brought up the wages a lot.
Yeah,
Same
we've seen
here.
that.
Same here. What's
Yeah.
the education system doing to increase that awareness or training to get people into the trades?
Yeah, so pretty much at that high school level, generally most schools have a careers advisor, and we have like different careers events. So there's like the apprenticeship expo that I spoke about, and then there's a lot of like career days that schools do, and they really have been putting an effort in and it's getting as much like trades based careers on display as well as the universities and all that study stuff as well.
To have it on a university
Jesus
level,
fucking Christ.
that blows my mind. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And because as you're saying that, that's like the best way to do it and the opposite of what we are
do
doing.
here. Yeah.
I mean, we have spent so much time pulling trades and cutting funding out of high schools over the last 15, 20 years that it's not even on anyone's radar at a college level.
Yeah. I mean, these kids, they have no idea the potential that there is in the trades. It's completely neglected from the conversation. It's go to college.
Yeah, that's
it.
Yeah.
That's the only conversation that gets had here. And it sucks because, I mean, people still need all their shit worked on. Things need to be built. Things need to be maintained and fixed. And I mean, we're drowning right now as far as our ability to bring anybody in. It's a fucking desert. And but we have to spend our time, money, effort to build these people up and bring them in. And like these conversations that we have with the women, like we're starting to see the resource that's there. It just wasn't really acceptable. That the trades had isolated themselves as a male dominated industry. And then the more of these women that we talk to, they're fucking rock stars at the job. And it's like, okay, well, let's see who the fuck else we can get in here,
Yeah, that's it. And even like, as you were saying, like even just the idea that the trades were looked down upon, it really kind of closed off the trades community as well, because they were kind of like, we need to protect each other, and being male dominated as well, it created that brotherhood, which was like in a reaction to the situation of, you guys look down upon, and then it's like, okay, we need to support each other.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good way to look at it. Huh. Yeah, it was reactionary. Yeah, we're totally just looking out for each other. We're not being douchebags. Yeah.
There's a bit of give and take there.
Yeah, right.
No, there definitely is. I'm fascinated with with the life coaching aspect, and because what is it that you're seeing and obviously I'm not asking that you share anything that's confidential, but if there's a common thread in the community, in the conversations that you're having with your clients, what does that look like?
It's a lot of like underlying beliefs that the women don't realize they have that is chipping away at their confidence. So it could be like something happening, like even just growing up, and like the women thinking that they need to do everything, they need to be independent, and not being like feeling like they can't ask for help. And another like trade specific and like male dominated trade specific is there's like a bit of a saying that people say, it's like women need to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. And it really kind of fuels like high functioning anxiety, where the girls are just trying to do everything so then they can be seen as equal. And realistically, like people, like managers' thoughts are their thoughts. Like, no one can change them. But, working yourself into the ground isn't going to make someone who's sexist stop being sexist.
Right. Well, and that also keeps you from being part of a team, right? when you're not willing to lean on your team members. And that's a huge part of the trades, is that it takes a massive amount of people to do most of these projects, and to not be able to ask for help, that's so stifling as far as what needs to be accomplished. And that, I mean, that's such a good point. Like, I really appreciate you brought that up, because I mean, I've seen that plenty of times. We had a couple of females that were underground with us when we were doing big tunnel jobs up in Canada, and they were just like, "Fuck you, get away from me." And it was just like, like, that's heavy as shit. And you see them struggling and you want to help them. They're like, "Fuck you, I've got it." And it's like, I get it, you can get it, but like, let me help you. Because if I was sitting here struggling and I saw somebody standing there watching me do it, I'd be like, "Motherfucker, get over here and help me pick this goddamn thing up,"
Yeah, and I think it's like really just like sometimes some of the girls that have really seen, and I've kind of had these behaviors myself, it's like you're trying so hard, like, or you've gone through a phase where you've worked so hard to be seen as independent, strong, worthy of actually being there. And then once you've kind of quote unquote made it, then it's really hard to let go of all those behaviors that got you there. So it's kind of like, yep, I'm now strong enough. I've now proven myself. I'm now part of the team. It's like, wait a second, I can stop proving myself now. And it's like unlearning that.
Okay.
Sounds like a great way to throw your back out.
Yeah. So you think it's a combination of life experience and self-sabotage?
Yeah, and it can kind of feed into each other as well, because sometimes, like, when someone says something negative to you, that's what sticks to you.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning of someone's career, especially when girls are often saying, "Hey, I want to be a carpenter, I want to be a mechanic," people are telling them, that's a man's job. Do you reckon you'll be able to do that? And that sticks. So even
why
when
is that the narrative? Like the fact that those words even comes out of somebody's mouth when communicating with another human being, that's what I have a hard time understanding. It's like, why is that the standard narrative?
Do we say that to male nurses? Like, "Oh, that's a woman's job. Why are you doing that?" I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm kind of asking two people. Like,
I mean, I don't know. I've never said that. So
I haven't either. But it's weird that it's so one-sided on that spectrum, that it's just like, "Oh, that's a man's job. It's dedicated to that." Yet we'll tell women to get in the fucking kitchen. Yet all the chef's positions are all fucking male. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like,
there's actually an interesting like situation with that. Even with with female dominated professions, the highest level and the highest achieving of those professions are often men.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a strange thing that just happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah. So how do you help them redirect that internal narrative?
Yeah. So more just like, it's a lot of acknowledging it. Like, okay, what, like, they're often like, "Okay, I need to be able to do everything." And like, "Why do you think you need to be able to do everything?" "Because I'll be seen as weak if I'm not able to do everything." "Okay, who's told you that you're weak?" "Someone 10 years ago told me that I couldn't do it." And they've been repeating that story over and over again. It's like, okay, cool. Let's work out how we can stop that story. All right. So recognizing that it comes up and being like, okay, when it comes up, I want you to, take a deep breath. Remember, like, we'll replace it with a different thought that, this other person that they respect has said that they belong there. Every time you think of this guy who said that you don't belong there, I want you to think about these 10 other people who said that you have belonged there, that you do belong there. Think of all your achievements. It's a lot of like letting go of what idiots have said to you and then reinforcing what you actually believe about yourself, the facts of the situation, and, the good things that people have said about you.
What are your experiences that give you this passion to life coach women in the trades?
I think when I was in this position, I just really wanted someone to tell me this. I worked myself sick, because even in the position where I worked out that I wanted to help other women succeed in the trades, I still thought I had to do everything. So there was that time when I said that I had burnt out and I worked myself sick. I couldn't work full time. I was working 40 hours on the tools, 40 hours plus teaching at a women's shed, plus public speaking, plus casually, like, freely mentoring women, all at the same time. Because I had this belief that if I wasn't working 40 hours on the tools, then I couldn't help other people work on the tools. And that was like the biggest one that really kind of ended up with a big, like, actually making me really sick.
Yeah.
But
Well,
even that, I have to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good. It was something that was playing over my head so often, where I felt like, if I wasn't doing everything, then I would be seen as weak. As soon as someone could see that I couldn't do something, they would be like, she's a woman, she can't do anything.
What is your definition of weak? Is it, that word's come up a few times, and if you say somebody would see me as weak, how would you define that? What does that look like?
Yeah, for me, I think they think that I can't do this.
Mm-hmm.
They think I can't be a mechanic. Like,
which is weird
if I can't do every single.
Yeah, I know plenty of dudes that can't do the fucking job either. So
I know, that's it, and it's even just like acknowledging that reality. And a lot of the times I tell the girls are like, and another pressure that women often put on themselves, they feel like they're representing all women because they might be the first.
It's quite a
first
burden.
Woman at that job site.
Yeah,
and then all the men on that job site are basing their opinion of women on them.
Yeah, that's also a really unfair levy to put on yourself. And I can understand where it can come from, but that's if we put everybody's vision of men on Josh, we'd be fucked.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Clearly. Men have no asses.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But is there something to be said about an attitude of not giving a fuck what other people think about you? I mean, I know that we all have a hard time letting go of all the derogatory shit that gets said. I learned not that long ago that being offended is a fucking choice. You choose to care what some fucking asshole says, does, or thinks about you, and you react upon that. And to realize that anybody of any worth is not spouting that kind of shit. It's just some self-conscious asshole that says that kind of stuff. And so I think being able to approach situations with that mentality comes a long way. Like, yeah, people say hurtful shit, but it's also up to you. How do you respond to it?
Yeah. And I think like a lot of times people recognize that they can then choose if they're offended, and then they go straight to trying not to be offended by anything or not take anything on board. Mm-hmm. And what that does is the brain's like, wait a second, we can't go from just taking everyone's thing to heart and then not. Mm-hmm. So I like often with my clients and like people, I just tell them, start doing it step by step. Like remember that the people who criticize your work doesn't mean anything about your actual self-worth as like a human being. Like that's it. Like your human being worth is separate from your skill as a mechanic, carpenter, whatever. And then it's like dropping off the people that you get offended by or you care about. So rather than going like all or nothing, be like, okay, so actually my supervisor is the one who pays me. So I'll mostly care about what they say. And then start dropping off like your coworkers who are just dickheads who are trying to steal your work or make you look bad. And then it's like, actually, you don't pay me. My supervisor pays me. So it's kind of like taking a step-by-step approach to then not giving a fuck about anyone's opinion.
Right. Yeah, because, I could see how you could ultimately lose a sense of morality doing that, too. You're like, well, fuck everyone. I don't have to do shit for anybody. Because I've been to that point in my life. And, you work underground and you start developing some really shitty ideas about people.
Yeah. Well, and Louise, something you said, it's difficult to change that narrative when your identity is tied to the skill.
Yeah.
And so being able to separate that self-worth and separate that from the skill and start to evaluate and value yourself as an individual and how you handle the situations and be able to do that in a way that complements the skill. That I think that's that's very difficult, because I remember even again for myself, my identity in the HVAC industry was solely built around being a service technician and being able to diagnose and troubleshoot. And when I wasn't able to do that, I felt like a failure, because again, my identity was tied directly to my craft, to my skill.
So would you say you offended yourself?
Well, it's like, I didn't see, it's like, okay, well, I'm a failure, or I shouldn't be doing this, or now I don't deserve this. I'm not worth the extra money. These types of things. I think that narrative starts to creep in. At least it did for me, until I was able to separate myself and my identity from the skill itself.
And I think that, like, often if we come back to, like, say the toxic masculinity or hyper masculinity that is put, like, on men, and then it's really prevalent in the male dominated industries, which I think sometimes where it comes, like, women come into that and they almost fall under that hyper masculine, toxic masculinity thing, trying to fit in. But a lot of men's worth is connected to their ability to be a provider in that setup. So it makes sense that so many men are struggling with their self-worth when they've taught their worth is dependent on how much they can provide for their family.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, that is the role that we're given, and there's a lot of men that they can't hack that, and they struggle with their self-worth. But I mean, at the same time, there's got to be some sort of relevancy to that, what do we do outside of that? I mean, that's what we are. That's what we do. What would we do outside of that? That's why we get up every morning at fucking 4 a.m. and go fucking haul trash trucks or go climb skyscrapers. We don't do it for ourselves. We do it to give it to other people, and to be a bunch of brutish dickheads about it. And while we're doing it, and then go home and treat our families really well, but talk shit on the women that are working next to us. That's a fucked up way to go about it.
It's just a whole society thing. Like, there's so many, like, even with the girls and, like, everyone, it's just like everything is so interwoven. So when you start talking about these problems, it's like you're like trying to untangle like a pair of tangled headphones, and you're like, okay, this is now in here and this is now in there. Like, a lot of the way, one of the best things that I like to say to companies that approach me and they're like, how can we make the place better for women? I'm like, we'll make it good for your men.
What a fucking concept. Yep. Well, there it is.
Jesus Christ.
Maybe you're just a shit company to work for.
No doubt. What is your definition, or how do you explain the toxic masculinity?
I think it's just that, like we just mentioned before, like, men's worth has been put on how much they can provide for their family. And they want to be seen as alpha. Like, they're pressured to be seen as a leader, pressured to be seen as not emotional, pressure to be seen to be able to take control of every situation. And realistically, like, when people are like that, we're like, you're a fucking dickhead anyway. But
it's like everybody's got to be John McClane from fucking Die Hard.
But often and then even that system, a lot of the times we talk generally how, like, the patriarchy, so, like, that kind of enforcement of the system benefits typically white men. But then actually it only really benefits white rich men. Every other person who isn't a white rich man is striving to get to that level, which is literally impossible and unsustainable, and actually doesn't actually make anyone happy anyway.
Well, and that's where most people push back against this whole conversation, is that you have middle class white men that are being accused of whatever, and they're just trying to fucking make it by with their families, and they're saying, it's you have all the fucking this and that in the world. And they're like, dude, I get up at 4 o'clock every morning. I don't get home till 5. And I go out and I do this labor intensive job, and I doing what I can, and then they get shit on for it. And it's, you're completely right. Like, that, it's very disenfranchising to the people that are actually doing the work to keep society moving. And they're just bastardized for it.
Well, I think there's also, I really appreciate what you're saying. And I think that there's this perception of a standardized formula for success. And you have to plug yourself into that formula, and the expectation is that you're going to achieve the same result as someone else. And that's total horseshit. You can't plug yourself into anyone else's equation and get the same result. It doesn't work that way. But if this perception, and I think maybe this perception is, it's like, oh, if you do these things, you'll be able to accomplish and achieve this. I think that personally, this is me thinking out loud, I think that kind of molds into that toxic masculinity thing. And it's like, well, if I do these things, and if I provide, and if I take control, and if I have the final say, this is the result that I'm going to generate, right? I'm going to plug myself into this standardized equation, and this is the result that I'm going to expect out of it. And then you spend decades of your life trying to plug yourself, square peg round hole into this formula that doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then people get bitter about it, and that's like, to have the conversation about the difference between toxic masculinity and masculinity. Like I am huge on my masculinity. I really fucking care about it. It's a big deal. And it seems like all masculinity has been labeled toxic masculinity, at least here in the United States. That's the conversation that gets had.
It's very extreme.
Yeah.
Especially when we talk about subjects like this, people are almost scared about it and they only see one extreme or another.
Yeah.
Like, I like to take it into, like, myself and my relationship. Like, previously to having my current partner, I was, dating tradies and all that kind of stuff. And I found that in the relationship, we were, like, fighting against each other's, like, quote-unquote masculinity. Mm-hmm. Because I'm really hands-on, I'm really that kind of thing. So in my current relationship, like, I am dating a man, but he is almost the more feminine one out of the both of us. He has that softer side to him where I'm like rough and tumble, get shit done, come on, push through. And he's like, wait a second, like hold back.
Yeah.
And even just labeling those traits as masculine and feminine, whether if you want to do it on paper or just to put a label on them, other people who aren't really like invested into knowing the intricacies of them just really put a blanket statement. Oh, masculine traits are for men and feminine traits are for women. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, they're just traits that have been labeled masculine and feminine because of the system that, feminine is inside soft and tender and masculine is outside rough and tumble.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that also is that's the standard, right? I mean, that's how most of this stuff is. I mean, and this, I don't think it's just a sociological thing. I mean, this goes all the way back to when we were hunter-gatherers, the roles we played within the tribes, that's what they looked like. And that's how we've upheld them. And then it's only the good graces of society that have allowed us to be the way that we are the reason we can reverse those roles. Because outside of that, the comforts that society provides, none of that exists. It doesn't hold up the flame,
Yeah. And even when we go back to that, like, our brain is still our primitive brain from back when cavemen and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times, like, even just being aware of that, like, humans are pack animals. If you left one human out in the desert on its own, like,
fucked.
You're screwed. Yeah. We're pack animals. You can't do everything. And even just saying, like, people putting pressure on themselves to be able to do all that parts of it, like, have that ideal life where you're working for 40 hours a week, you have a hobby, you're keeping your house clean, like, that's a team effort. That was never meant for one person.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it's a sociological construct. And and that's how we choose to live life. And, you can separate yourself from that. You can step away from it, but you're going to have one hell of a fucking time when you do. It's easy to get upset and blame everything on society, but all those battles are internal. You've never had more freedom at any point in human existence to be whatever the fuck it is you want to be than right now. You're the most accepted. You're the most free to be whatever you want to be. So do that. It's not up to us, the rest of us, to figure that out for you. And that's, I think, where a lot of people fuck up, is they sit there and they wait to be told where they should fit in. Like, oh, hey, you do really good at this. And then they latch onto that, whether they like it or not. They just want the social acceptance.
Yeah, it's back to, like, even just touching on the primitive brain again. Like, if you were kicked out of the tribe, then you would die. Mm-hmm. So now our brain is still acting on that. It's like, okay, if society sees me as different, then your brain still reacts in that way that you're going to get kicked out of the tribe and you're going to die. But realistically now, if you're different, then you still go to the supermarket and can buy your food.
I was going to say, you swipe right and find a new tribe. I mean, that's kind of the simplicity of it.
I mean, this is the definition of American politics right here. So, yeah. Are you left or right? I'm like, motherfucker, I ain't even on the goddamn road. I'm sitting up on the hilltop with a rifle. So fuck all of you.
I'm curious. I'm not purposely, just so I don't lose the question. I want to steer the question back to the whole tradie lady. What's the dominating industry for the tradie ladies where you're at?
So I was asked this question like 2 weeks ago as well. So I think for all of us, it's different, like all the men. The common ones that I've seen, women, or where the higher numbers are, is electrical, carpentry, and like painting and decorating. And then I was also asked, what do you think the one that people stray away, like women stray away from the most? And honestly, that's like a personal preference. But like for me, like heavy vehicle mechanic, like I could be rolling on like around underneath a garbage truck with like oil and maggots around, and I'd be having the time of my life. But get me to pick up bricks and like that kind of thing is like
Masonry
I just
work?
don't
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
But everyone's different.
I think hands down drywallers across the board would be the one that, I mean, the men don't even want to do it, you know, let alone anybody else. Because that job sucks.
It does. And I'm trying to think. I only saw maybe 2 women in the HVAC industry in my entire career.
No shit.
Very, very, very selective. And it's not an appealing industry.
Well, because it doesn't pay dick.
It doesn't. It is a poor. I think drywallers probably make quite a bit more than than residential HVAC techs.
Yeah.
But no, I was just curious because in creating that awareness and educating and informing people for opportunities and growth and moving forward, I was just interested. It's like, okay, what are they not say migrating to, but what are they more attracted to? Secondly, in those industries or in any of the industries, what is the necessity of good leadership for women in the trades?
I think it's just open dialogue.
Okay.
Like how we were talking about in the beginning, being able to be like open door policy with conversations, being like, hey, like talk to me, like I'm one of you, but then if something crosses the line, I'll tell you.
I mean, that's a conversation we had with Karina when she started.
Right.
You know, it's
so
like,
kind
hey,
of setting that precedent.
Yeah, just give the open door. Just be like, hey, whatever the fuck is going on, you know, just let us know if somebody crosses a line. Tell us. We will fucking handle it. It will get dealt with, and it's not going to be this. Oh well, what did you know? It's not going to be accusatory. You know, and that I feel like that's the line that you got to draw. It's not like we're going to go out and motherfuck somebody because they said this. I mean, because it could have been taken out of context, you know? And so it's like, it's not like, oh, you felt uncomfortable, so we're going to fire somebody, you know? It's like, let's look at it.
That's where, like, a lot of, like, even when I started looking into the coaching space and, like, what I could actually do, like, I found a really big gap in between not saying anything and going to HR. So, like, I was in a situation where, like, when I was at Cummins, I was in an ethics case that was sexual harassment, and it was awful. All I wanted was this guy to stop bullying me. The guy ended up getting sacked. Then no one in the workshop would talk to me because everyone got investigated because he was bullying me in front of people, and everyone thought I was trying to get everyone fired. But really, I just wanted the tools to be able to tell him to, like, fucking shut up and stop saying this shit about me. But there was nowhere in between that I could get that help. So a lot of the things that I work with anxiety and all that kind of thing, but also working through sexual harassment. Like, what can you do to stop it before you go to that, like, quote unquote extreme of going to HR or into the office? Like, what can you do to stop that guy from saying shit to you? You know, have the conversation with him. You know, lay the how do you have these conversations with people who are treating you like shit? Right.
Well, and I when we were the one that we did previous to this one, I think having like a male counterpart on your side as well, like that.
A teammate.
And I think that having righteous men that stand up and they're like, hey, fucking stop, this is unacceptable, because that one dude pipes up. That changes the whole game.
It does.
And I think it takes men standing up and being like, dude, don't fucking say that to her.
Because it breaks that gang mentality.
Yeah.
And there's a whole heap of, like, techniques to do that. So we won't be able to go through all of them, but there's a book called The Feminist Fight Club. And it's not directed at women in trades. It's actually a woman who was a journalist who wrote it. But she goes through, like, all of these different techniques to deal with harassment, to get yourself, like, stand up for yourself. So that was, like, one of the first books that I read that actually gave me techniques to sort this stuff out, like, on, like, quote unquote, on my own, like, be able to be like, hey, this is how you have a conversation. Hey, this is how you get someone on your side. Hey, this is how you get heard at meetings, like that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, it takes us. I mean, the trades are run on unity, right? That's why there's fucking unions and all that other stupid shit that goes along with it. But it takes all of us to do this fucking job. And so if we're ousting one person and allowing people to oust them, there's got to be some dude that's man enough to step up and just do the fucking job of like, hey, do you guys want to be treated like that? You know, like
being a piece of shit.
Yeah,
and
you walk up and grab my ass, you're gonna be missing your fucking teeth. Like it's gonna be the same thing, you know.
Unless you're cute.
Oh, that's
so
funny. Once I had this situation where the boys where I was working on the site, they would always like try and dax each other. And I was bending over this truck one time, and I was like working away. And all I hear is someone yell across the workshop, "Hey, that's Louise!" And this guy was like next to me, ready to like dax me because he couldn't tell that it was me.
Oh, was that pantsing? Is that pantsing?
Yeah, pantsing.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So all I hear is like, "Hey, that's Louise!" like across the workshop, and then I just look up and the guy's like standing next to me, being like,
I'm wide-eyed as shit. Fuck! I gotta go to HR right now.
I have a two-part question relating to the experience that you just said with the sexual harassment case. One, knowing what you know now, how would you have handled that differently? And two, had anyone else, any other man specifically, intervened and stood up, how would that have changed the outcome of that whole situation?
I think that situation in particular had so many different layers. But one thing I know that I definitely would do differently is, like we talked a bit about before, like the banter and like fitting in that way. And when this guy was like when he started picking on me, I was like, "Oh, haha, look, he's picking on me. I fit in." And I was just laughing it off. And he took that as, "Oh, it's okay. She can handle this." And then he kept going and going and going. And I just kept laughing it off because I was like, I don't know what to do about this. So he kept taking me like, "Haha, that's funny." Like, as, "Oh, it's okay, she can keep taking it." But really, like, if I went back in time with the tools that I have now, I'd be like, "Hey, like, I don't like that. Can you not say that to me?" And I feel like that whole situation would never have happened.
Do you feel like that conversation needs to be had privately also? Like, because I feel like that conversation could go south if it was like in a public display, right?
I think the different, so like I said, lots of layers. This guy that was bullying me had been to jail for violence before. So there was lots of layers.
So he's kind of a piece of shit.
Yeah. So there was so many layers to it. But yeah, having that conversation. And I think that privately versus publicly is definitely something that you need to judge.
But you also need to have someone with authority of the company be a part of that. I know it, especially in this country, because of the legalities of that. If you're going to have that conversation privately, the owner or your boss, manager, whatever, also needs to be in attendance to that.
Well, that's not.
So, like,
is that still privately then? Or?
Well, it's.
I mean, there's a difference between being out back on the dock and being like, "Hey, did you say that thing earlier?" And like, dude, I really don't like that, you know. As opposed to like being on the shop floor and being like, "Hey, I don't fucking like that," you know, like, and then they get kind of emasculated by it or whatever, you know, like, and I mean,
I think there's like, it's definitely like going into context about it. Like, say if it's like your mate who you'd say, "Yeah, I'm friends with that guy, and I think he just crossed the line." You can be like, "Hey, mate, cross the line back there. I don't like it." Like, I would say that would be a situation where you do it like quote unquote privately.
Sure.
But yeah, it all depends on your safety. Even I had a friend who was saying that her boss was abusing her, like just yelling at her, and she wanted to leave. And she was like, "Should I do it in person? Should I send an email? Should I like call him?" And I said, "That guy, like, you feel physically unsafe around that guy, so I would do it over the phone." Like, that kind of thing. It's like taking that kind of stuff into account. Like, are you actually friends? Would you call this person your friend? Is this a work relationship? Is this a leader where, yeah, maybe with the legalities of working in the business, you should get someone from the business involved? Like, very situational.
Yeah, that's a good gauge, you know? Like, I was definitely only looking at it as like a one track kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, you got somebody that's very prone to violence. It's doing stupid shit like that. Like, it's, yeah. And the thing is, nobody wants to be a snitch either, you know? Like, you don't want to feel like you're running to the boss to fix your fucking problems, but there's a time and a place for that shit, you know? Like, if one of the guys came to me and was like, "Hey, dude, This dude fucking is up my ass all the time. He's calling me this, calling me that. He threw something at me the other day. I'd be like, well, where the fuck is he? Let's go deal with this right now. You know, and I feel like there shouldn't be any separation between men and women when it comes to that conversation.
Well, that goes back to the second part of my question. Like, it had that went differently if someone else in that company who witnessed it also stood up and been like, dude, or even came to you and asked you, said, hey, are you okay with this? Like, I mean, you seem to be laughing it off,
like,
but
it would kind of be like me voicing up myself and someone else voicing up for me would it be like the two best case scenarios for that situation.
Yeah.
But I think no one could really, I don't know if they were ignoring my discomfort, like in how I was dealing with it. Because even though like I was trying to, like at the time I was like, oh, I'm fine with this, whatever. I wasn't fine. And like, you know, no one asked me if I was okay. No one like picked up on that discomfort. So they didn't like stand up for me. But even in going back to like being like quote unquote a snitch, like I ended up having a big breakdown in the workshop, and my manager like put me in the office. He got like one of the admin ladies to come and talk to me, and the admin lady was like, well, we need to go straight to HR with this. So I didn't really like willingly, consciously go forward with it. But because it was happening publicly, everyone in the workshop got investigated as part of that process, and then I was isolated because everyone thought I was trying to get people fired.
Right.
And then once that hits
such
HR,
an isolating experience.
Yeah, like you can't have conversations with people in the company about it because it could be a conflict of interest or
right.
or whatever. So
well,
it's a bad situation.
I mean, this is like a perfect example of nipping something in the bud. You know, like, and I feel like, you know, any women out there that are listening to this, taking care of it immediately is far more effective than just kind of letting it ride out, right? Because then all, like you said, the whole shop's involved, and yeah, of course, people are going to be a little pissy about that, you know, and especially when they don't know the extent of what the situation was. You know, they just saw him being a dick, and they're like, "Hey, he's a fucking dick to me too," you know. So it's, you know, it's outsider perspective looking in, and that's, I mean, you can't really mitigate that.
And I think that's the reason why I love coaching so much. Is just because like having a coach that's totally separate from the situation, and you go in and you say, hey, this guy said this to me this morning and I laughed it off, but blah, blah, and they'd be like, that's not okay. How do you feel about that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, and like we've talked about, I mean, it would have taken one or two guys to stand up and been like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you doing? You know? But like you were saying, it breaks up that mob mentality, you know,
and that's that mob mentality bullshit.
And the unit should be singular. You know, we should all be a part of this team, and we all bastardize each other for something or another, but to make it as something stupid as that, you know, it's like, and then to let some asshole get away with it, that's fucked.
Yeah. No. So no, there's like I think like we've touched on so many different topics like in this this conversation.
That's our normal conversation.
It just goes everywhere.
Yeah.
But even just like knowing the systems and like even just doing that research into like the patriarchy, into like hypermasculinity, toxic masculinity, when you're in those situations, it helps you put a label on it and puts it like outside of your self-worth. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, this supervisor is acting this way because society has taught him to act that way. It doesn't have a reflection of me and my self-worth.
Yeah, I mean, but also that's not a fucking excuse either, though. I mean, if you're being a dick, you're being a dick, you know. But yeah, but I get it. I see. You're saying to compartmentalize it and to be able to deal with it. To be able
to be like, this isn't about me.
Right. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because usually, then if we're making a situation about us, then we get in our own head, we get our own anxiety, we get our own depression about it. Right. But when we make it about like, oh yeah, it's the system, we stay mentally strong and we can then fight the system, like quote unquote fight the system if we stay mentally strong.
Yeah, I mean that's also the same thing to be said about men as well too, though. I mean, like you said, the stresses that are put on us by society to do the fucking job and do all the things that we're supposed to quote unquote do to be the provider and all that. It's the same thing. And then that for men to be emotionally mature enough to not use women as a pincushion for that you know, and to take the fucking burden of it and be like, okay, how do I fucking deal with this, you know? And I think that that's a conversation that a lot of men need to have with themselves at the end of the day, you know?
Well, and I think that really dictates the quality of relationship that they have at home. If that's what they believe, if they're in this, again, that internal dialogue is that they have to be the provider and they have to control the situation, that's not going to lead to a healthy home life at all. You know, for your spouse, for your kids, because you can't separate those two things. You can't rewire yourself on the way home and on the way to work in a way that's going to allow you to differentiate your behavior between the two. So
I can take it out on this chick at work instead of my wife.
Well, it's like,
and the saddest thing is so many people do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're the surrogate for it, right? You know, it's like, oh man, my home life is so great now, but I fucking ruined this other woman.
Well, look at, you know, you have a guy that has that mentality, right? That they have to be the provider, and then they go out into work, and they have someone that has an authoritative position over them that is female, and then they go home and they have a wife that makes more money than them.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
Just
a
give me 1
recipe
second,
for
I'll be back.
disaster. Yeah. You know, that's a recipe for disaster to me, because it's like, all right, well, you're waking up every day and you're not fulfilling what you think you should be fulfilling.
Yeah, but I mean that's a conversation we have a lot. Is like, what does fulfillment look like?
Right.
You know, and seems to be a lot of stupid shit that people find fulfillment in that they don't know why that's what's supposed to be fulfilling them. They just take this on wholeheartedly of like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do, and it's like, have you ever once sat down with yourself and just like sat on a fucking rock during a sunset, and thought about life a little bit? You know. Like,
no, most of them haven't, right? They never detached themselves enough from that story to look at an outside perspective, or even try to you see something through a different lens. Like you're talking about, like fully. When's the last time you went somewhere and didn't take your phone?
Right.
You know, just that kind of detachment type thing. So
just stared off into the distance and fucking minding your own goddamn business.
Yeah. It's like, nope, scrolling.
I think there's something to be said about boredom. Like, people need to be fucking bored sometimes. Like, to not have that constant stimulation.
Well, the distraction.
Yeah.
Right? The distractibility.
Well, even with that, like, people are so used to all the stimulation that when they get bored, they think they're depressed. And they can't handle their own.
Yeah.
That is great.
That is brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sad. No, motherfucker, you're just bored. Don't eat.
Yeah. But we're not taught, like, as kids, like, a lot of us, like especially, like, people around my generation and a bit younger, like, we weren't taught to be bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we're so used to stimulating and being able to avoid our actual thoughts. And when we do have a minute to sit with our thoughts, it's awful.
The world comes crashing in on you.
Most people don't like what they say to themselves.
Get into philosophy, you fucks.
Louise, I want to be respectful of your time, and I know you've got things going on. As we start to wrap this up here, is there anything that you want to share that we haven't covered, or something that you want to touch on that we have covered?
Not really. I think it's just like there's so many different layers to things that sometimes we get fixated on one particular part of it, and we almost use it against ourselves. It's really important to remember, like, yeah, there's a whole big picture here, and there's so many different systems involved that fixating on one part of it might actually be worse for us. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. The hyperfixate in one area, because I mean, it's multifaceted. It's all over the place, and but that's where you get your fucking campaign heroes from, right? You know, like, that's where the extreme feminism comes from. It's like, I focused on this one area, fuck all the men. It's like, what?
Yeah. It's even just like looking how we were talking about toxic masculinity. Like, there's the toxic masculinity and how it affects women, and there's also how it affects men.
Right. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people, and not just women. I think there's going to be a lot of people that would be interested in having a conversation with you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way for people to get in touch with me is through my Instagram, which is Louise_as_a_party_1996.
Okay.
Put in Louise as a party, it'll come up.
And it'll be. I'll put in the show notes too, so that way people
Yeah.
can see how
Definitely,
to spell
like
it.
you can reach out, through to me through that. Also, if you're a Facebook person, you can friend me on Facebook, and chat to me through there. But yeah,
Okay. If you have like a couple minutes, I want to chat with you when we sign off here. If you have
yeah, oh good. I just need to let my friend up.
Okay. Nope, that's good. Because we're going to wrap up here. Nate, anything in closing?
No, I think we nailed it.
And Louise, thank you so much for reaching out. This was, God, the compound effect that I'm getting from these conversations is just fucking phenomenal.
Right.
And I haven't taken notes in a while, and I've wrote some shit down. So, Louise, thank you so much for being here.
Oh good.
You can find her on Instagram. I will have her Instagram in the show notes. You can find Nate on Instagram at NateNewton87. I am on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com. And the website is thetradesmanexperience.com. Also, check out the YouTube channel, The Tradesman Experience YouTube channel. Guys, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Get out there, get shit done. Be proud to be a tradesman. See ya.